Now, being a marriage celebrant, I guess people are wondering what do things happen at weddings, And being the marriage celebrant there, can you tell which couples would last and which wouldn't, even at the wedding?
I try not to make any decisions or any kind of
Judgment?
judgment
Yeah.
because you can never really tell, right? It's tempting to think that we can predict the future based on the energy dynamics that's happening there, but the matter is very complex. Truth is more complex. Say weddings are usually high emotive events.
Yeah.
So sometimes people are not really behaving as they would because everything is hyped up.
Yeah.
That's what you mean.
So you mean they're not being themselves?
They're not, well, they're nervous and then they're tense and etc. You mean looking at them at the wedding itself or during the preparation for the wedding?
At the wedding, because you're being the marriage celebrant there.
Yeah. Well, I would have known the nature of a little bit of the relationship through the interviews I've had with them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's usually when they come to me to say they want to get married, and that's when I can gauge already their true relationship and how comfortable they are with each other. Why I'm saying that in vis-a-vis being at the wedding itself, because the wedding itself is almost like unnatural in the sense that they don't see each other for the day before, the night before, and so they're coming in almost like a different person. And the bride and the groom is sitting there with all his friends, such standing there with the the best man, everything and their family. So that is kind of a little bit unnatural in the sense that they're not really their comfortable self. So you can't really tell whether they themselves are relating in a way that you'd think, oh, this relationship will last because or they won't last because they're too nervous or they're not talking to each other. So you can't really gauge just from the marriage itself.
I mean, can you get a sense like one party is more into this wedding than the other person?
Yes. You can. I can already tell that from even before.
Yeah, it's like one is far more keen than the other.
Oh, yes.
And that kind of like gives you a feeling of saying, maybe it might not last because the other one is not really into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I can.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's almost like if it's not going to be positively hopeful that they're going to last, you can tell immediately. But if you see that, you can't really conclude that they won't.
Yeah.
By that I mean, I think of an example is, I had one wherein the groom was very eager and into the he was there ahead of time.
Yeah, and
all that, but the bride was not smiling.
Okay, that's a bit unusual because normally it's the other opposite. The bride is more keen than the groom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this particular one, the bride was almost not very engaged with the groom, and I thought. And I was looking for a sign that she was comfortable with him. And
you don't think she was forced?
No, she wasn't forced. I mean, that's always the number one thing that I need to
be aware of and alert and
from the very beginning. From the very beginning, so that now we have to have this conversation face to face with each of the parties. Before they didn't require this, but now they require that we interview the bride by herself, the groom by himself.
Yeah, separately.
Separately. So before they will just be sitting there in front of me, and then they will tell me their story and what they want. And normally it's usually, as you say, the girls are always keen on what they want. And they want the flowers this way.
I think so. Some women are more in love with the wedding itself than thinking about the marriage.
Yes. And having said that, I've had several couples who were in the groom was very much the driving force
of the wedding,
wedding.
and getting married.
Yeah,
Which
getting
is
married.
unusual.
Unusual.
Yeah.
Well, it's usually when I'm thinking back, it's usually when the groom, bride to be, is from, say, the Philippines,
Yeah.
and they haven't really been together as long as they should have. But it's not that there's people say, oh, you're male bride. It's not like that.
Yeah.
They know each other. They've been, sometimes they were friends and girlfriends in the Philippines for a long time, and then they got separated because the guy came here to work, and they have this big gap in the middle of when they've been writing to each other. So there's always that situation where it might not be that way. It might be like they just met very casually, and then they started to write each other. And so when they came, it's like distance marriage, and then a distant relationship. And then when they actually came, they have to get used to each other. So they have to be like familiar with their, with being together. So you can tell that. And that's when the situation is where the guy is more
into it than she is.
Than she is, because she's the one planning it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've had also, not just Filipinos, I've also Vietnamese brides coming in. And not to put any sort of aspersions on them, because people's marriages and their decision to marry is only theirs, and the only thing that we have to make sure is that it is a fully consented, aware, and conscious consent, with them having all the information that they need to have. So we can't say you can't get married because you're not really truly in love with her or something.
Okay, all right. But on that though, do you get an inkling of what the personal reasons of each partner why they're getting married then?
You can from the conversation.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about how they are behaving.
Yeah, well, you just get a feeling of why they're getting married. And one is just because they want to get married, or because their parents pushed them into it, or they truly in love, or they were convinced to get married by by the family or their partner.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You can tell when one is more into it than the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have not had one marriage, as far as I can tell, where the man was not into it. It was the girl.
Oh, okay. You haven't had, that's, I guess that'll be surprising to a lot of people, because people normally expect, women love that sort of romance and wedding, I guess, and dream of and I guess a lot of women are guilty of that. They do all this planning for the wedding, but they don't really consider about the marriage itself. Is that saying? Yeah.
Not too much of that.
Not too much of that?
No, not from my experience. My experience.
Okay. Yeah. So it's and so could you tell the nature of the marriage from how the family or the guests react?
You can tell from that. You can tell from that. Well, I've got a recent wedding wherein this couple was a little bit. They were very much wanting to be on their own. The bride wasn't really very connected with. They weren't very connected with their parents.
Yeah. Right?
Usually because they're young people and they want to be alone. They want to live their own lives, and they don't want to be too much of their traditional thing. And then because they're getting married, so they have to involve family.
Yeah.
And you can tell that the parents had something to say about how the marriage should be. So there's a little bit of a kind of a tension there. Not tension, but a reluctance. Oh, why should we have that prayer? Why should we have that ritual? Why do we have to? But because they're wanting to do it because it'll please the family to have it. And and towards the end, when they actually get into it, they see the beauty of the ritual, and then they get
into it.
Get into it. Yeah. Because you must remember, there are different kinds of people who are getting married.
Yeah.
There are young people. There are elderly people. I've had a couple that this was their the second marriage.
For both partners?
For both partners.
Yeah.
Meaning one partner, this is her husband had passed away, and the guy he divorced his former wife, so not for her, but just divorced. So some of them are not like the young giddy, but they are really people who have lived life, and so they know what they want, they know what they've got left to want, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So and you have to take them as they are, and you have to take them with their dreams that this is what they want.
Okay, and so